Okay, so we're back here doing some transplanting. I'm going to give you guys a couple techniques. Just going to make sure that your newly transplanted plants do really well. So we're doing two main things. First of all, before we even pull the plants that we're going to transplant, we make sure that we give them some good water, okay? Because we want them to make sure that they have plenty of water in the system before we pull them out of the ground. So then we do that and we wait a little bit, maybe an hour or 2 hours. And then we transplant them. Once we plant them, we again put water and then we provide them with just a little bit of shade. So this fern plant's only going to last maybe a couple days and it's going to die. That's long enough for this tomato plant to regain its strength. Only we just want a little bit of protection for those first day or two that it's in the ground. So I'm going to kind of clear these area a little bit. We're going to go in here and make a nice little hole, kind of break up the soil a little bit. And the reason you want to break this up a little bit is that way the roots will grow quick and easy. You don't have to fight compact soil. Definitely don't just like smash a hole with a stick, because when you do that, you're just compacting the soil, making it harder for the plant's roots to penetrate. So these are kind of bunched up a little more than I'd like, but that's okay. And see, I've got this root stock, so I'm going to kind of make sure it gets buried nice and deep. And I'm just going to break up this dirt here, sprinkle it around, make sure it's got plenty of dirt. And I might bury it just a little bit more than it originally was, but not much, because if you bury it too much more, then you could get some rot going on. And I'm going to pack it down just a little bit, because if I don't, the water is just going to totally mess everything up. I go here, give it just a little bit of water. You can see it's already kind of fainting. That's okay, it'll spring back. And I'll take a fern piece. I don't know if I had one, maybe I lost it, but just get a little piece of fern here. Give this guy a little bit of shade. That was a horrible placement. So, and all this is doing is giving this plant a little bit of shade for its first couple of days that it's here, especially because right now it's been pretty hot around, so we want to make sure that these plants don't get totally roasted just as soon as we transplant, because they are going to have some shock. So plants are always going to experience shock when they're pulled out of the ground. Ideally, it would be nice if you could transplant your plants with the ball of roots completely covered in the soil, but these ones are some of them grew so close together that we have to do a little bit of separation on them. We have to pull those roots apart and expose them just so we can get the plants separated. So ideally, some of them were seeded far enough apart that we're able to just take the scoop and like dig out the whole plant and have like a nice chunk of dirt and everything with it. And that's going to make sure that the plant doesn't experience the same level of shock that it does when you completely expose the roots. So just take another piece of fern here. Give this guy some shade. There we go. And continue on. Assuming I didn't just lose those tomato plants. Where did I put them? Here they are. So I got two more here. And you really want to try and keep them out of the sun, the roots especially, out of the sun as much as possible. This one I don't need to provide any extra shade, it's got plenty here. So I'm just going to throw it in there. Cover it up. See, it's already kind of starting to faint. And the fainting will go away within a day, maybe even hours, depending on how much shock it went through. Give it some water. Take this guy here. Keep the roots kind of covered from the sun. And move on to the next spot, which just happens to be right here. This one I want to get nice and deep because it's got this really long root piece on there. So that's basically its tap root. Okay, kind of jerking it around a little bit, that's alright. See, it's kind of acting a little fainty. Get my fern piece for him. Stab it in the ground there for it. It's kind of weak placement. And if you totally cover it, that's fine. By the time this fern will root, kind of wither and move out of the way anyways. So there you go. So now we're gonna go down and pull some more out. So I'll show you technique for removing them from the transplanting area where we're transplanting them from. So you can see here it's all doing pretty good. And you can see the soil's nice and wet where we transplanted them. You can see some of them are really close together. So when they're not close together though, we're going to try and take them out as a whole. When I see one that's pretty isolated here, so this guy right here, looking pretty good. Just basically cut out a whole section for him, then pop him out as a unit. And then I'll transplant this entire root ball here. And this will definitely prevent it from going into shock. This was a nice one. And ideally you'd plant them all this far apart, but sometimes when you're sowing the seeds in there, they get kind of clustered up and they sprout together. And that's okay. Like I said, you just gotta take a little bit of extra precaution when you go back and transplant them. So now you've got the soil here. I'm gonna take this out, keeping it as fully intact as I can. Come over here, make a hole that's big enough for it. And if you do it by the book, your hole should be actually about 20 to 30% larger than the root ball that you're transplanting. And that's so that way when you fill that dirt back in, it's nice and loose. Place that in there. We'll just fill it back in. So we got some worms in there, plenty of worms. That's good. Good sign. Healthy soil should have worms. And we're just going to kind of pack it down a little bit. And this one shouldn't go into shock, but still, I like to be thorough and I like to make my plants as happy as possible, so I'm going to give it some water. And then I'm also going to give it a nice little shade fern. Like I said, this fern is only going to keep it shaded for a day or two, but it's definitely going to help it be nice and happy, because your plants are most vulnerable when they're a little tiny sprout. So kind of show you all the transplanting we've done. You see everywhere there's a fern, we got a little tomato plant. We've got them all in a row here. You see this one had some pretty serious shock. So we're just gonna make sure this fern is not really doing too good of a job. Take a little bit of grass, kind of throw it up there, give it some extra shade. See, this one's got a couple ferns there, nice and happy. See, this one also had some pretty good shock, but they'll snap back, you know. That one was just laying completely on the ground. So is this one, just laying completely flat on the ground when I first transplanted it earlier this morning, and now it's already back up and happy. So we're just gonna keep doing that in rows, going up this whole hill here. We're gonna be planting tomatoes. Once it gets above a 45-degree incline, you can see over there, the hill's pretty steep. We're gonna switch to cucumbers, squash, and watermelon. They like to grow on a steeper incline. 60 degrees or so is pretty good, because you can still climb up it and harvest them, and it's a nice incline to let them kind of come down and grow. And you see this flat area, that's where we're going to be putting all of our cabbage and lettuce. So cabbage and lettuce will be on the flat area. Over here on the side where it's steep, we're going to be planting a ton of watermelons, because it's nice and a little bit extra wetness going on. So we're just kind of fitting this little microclimates to the plants that we're planting, and that'll make sure that they all stay nice and happy. And then, you know, in 3 or 4 months we can start doing some harvesting. In 5 or 6 months we can do the final big harvests, and everything will be good. So thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for an update on this beautiful jungle farm plot.